Every mark on me is a promise the world never heard. They met every Tuesday, a silent ritual, punctual as the clock ticking on the distant wall, that I, the small waiting table, witnessed in every fiber of my varnished wood. To hurried glances, I was merely a support. To the hands that touched me, a cold surface. But for Arthur and Maria, I was the stage for a love that defied logic and whispered secrets that could never be shouted. I absorbed the tension of their encounters, the contained melancholy in their smiles, and the despair disguised in every goodbye. It wasn't a fairy tale, but a real drama, woven with threads of desire and the harsh reality that kept them apart. And there, under the soft afternoon light, I became the silent guardian of the impossible, the mute confidant of promises made under the weight of a secret. I remember the first Tuesday. He arrived first, impeccable in his suit, with the air of one carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. He sat in the chair in front of me, opened a newspaper, but his restless eyes scanned the door. She, Maria, appeared moments later, bringing with her a soft scent of paint and freedom. She carried a sketchbook, and her eyes, oh, her eyes, they were an invitation to a universe of dreams, even if veiled by a subtle melancholy. The first encounters were of stolen glances, discreet smiles exchanged over the pages of magazines I patiently held. My varnished surface felt the warmth of their hands, sometimes, when, by accident, they touched while reaching for the same object. A silent electrical discharge that I, the table, absorbed, transforming it into an invisible scar on my wooden soul. I listened to the trivial topics that disguised the real conversation, the unspoken desire, the curiosity they awakened in each other. Arthur, a man trapped in a web of unbreakable commitments, came there week after week under the guise of a physical therapy appointment, but the truth was he sought the light Maria brought. And she, Maria, with her artist's soul yearning for colors and freedom, found in Arthur the melody of a love seemingly designed only for the shadows. I saw the way he glanced at the ring on his finger, a brief tightening of his lips, and then an almost imperceptible sigh that I, and only I, noticed. The secrets, they weren't spoken, but felt. Their love was an underground river, flowing beneath the surface of a life that imposed insurmountable barriers on them. No explicit words of commitment were exchanged, but I saw in her eyes the hope, and in his, the weight of a promise he couldn't make. I became the unholy altar of a passion that, as impossible as it was pure and overwhelming in its secret form. They left small gifts on me, a folded note under an empty cup, a quick sketch from Maria for Arthur, a poem he had read and left for her. These were crumbs of affection, seeds of a garden that would never bloom in the sunlight, but that, in the dim light of that waiting room, blossomed in silence. I was the sole witness to the beauty and pain of this love that deepened every Tuesday. As weeks passed, Tuesdays ceased to be mere casual encounters. They became secret oases. I saw Arthur arrive with a smile that only Maria could evoke, a sparkle in his eyes that faded as soon as he crossed the threshold into his other life. And Maria, with an almost painful sensitivity, absorbed every nuance of his gaze, every hesitation, every sigh he disguised with a clearing of his throat. I felt the weight of their hopes and the lightness of their fears settling upon me. Conversations deepened. They were no longer about art or work. They were about lost dreams, about loneliness amidst the crowd, about the longing for a different life. I heard Arthur's whispers about how empty he felt, the gilded cage he lived in. Maria, in turn, shared her yearning for a complete love, a partner who saw her whole, without halves. These confessions were deposited on my surface, as if my wood were an invisible shield against the world's judgment. I was the witness to their moral dilemmas. I saw Arthur's hand hesitate before touching his wedding ring, a constant reminder of his commitment. I observed Maria biting her lip, guilt dancing in her clear eyes, for desiring a love that already had an owner. They didn't openly speak of the impediment, but the air between them was charged with the weight of that truth. I was the repository of their silent guilts, of their internal battles that the outside world would never perceive. On a rainy Tuesday, the drama reached a point of near rupture. Arthur arrived drenched, his face pale. "I can't do this anymore, Maria," he whispered, his voice choked. "This is killing me." Maria, with tear-filled eyes, reached her hand across me, and he held it, squeezing it with an intensity one had never felt before. The implicit promise to resolve things, to fight for a future, hung in the air. I felt the table tremble slightly with the force of that desire, that hope that seemed as fragile as glass. They promised to find a solution, a path to happiness that seemed so distant. But with each passing Tuesday, I saw the despair deepen. Arthur tried to break free from his invisible chains, and Maria oscillated between faith and resignation. I felt the scent of coffee mingle with the salt of unshed tears, and with each tick of the clock, I knew that time was running out for this love that blossomed only in secret on my silent surface. Then came the Tuesday I dreaded. It wasn't just any Tuesday. I felt in the air the weight of something irreversible. Arthur arrived with swollen eyes, a weariness that transcended his body, and the wedding ring on his finger seemed to gleam with a cruel intensity. Maria, paler than usual, was already seated, her fingers trembling on my varnish, tracing invisible patterns. There were no restrained smiles, no secret notes. Just the dense, heavy silence, the sound of two hearts breaking in my mute presence. He spoke first, his voice hoarse, almost inaudible, but I, the little table, absorbed every vibration of his pain. "I can't do this anymore, Maria," he whispered, and I felt as if a crack opened within me, echoing the rupture in his voice. "My family, the pressure. I tried. I swear I tried." The regret and defeat were palpable, settling on my surface like an unbearable weight. Maria closed her eyes, a single tear escaping. It was the end of the illusion. It was the moment when the promise made upon me, that promise of a future together, shattered into 1,000 invisible pieces. She didn't cry aloud, didn't make a scene. Maria's dignity was an even greater torment. "I understand, Arthur," she replied, her voice barely a thread. "I always knew. But I believed." To believe, I thought, is the cruelest of hopes when love is impossible. The silence that followed was the most deafening of all. A silence that screamed goodbye. Arthur reached out, briefly touched her hand on me, a farewell touch that felt like a last breath. Then he stood up. I saw his shoulders slumped, the figure that once exuded captivating charm, now just the shadow of a defeated man. Before Maria left, she placed something on my surface, a small origami bird, made from sketch paper. It was a bird with a broken wing. Her secret symbol of hope, now wounded. She looked at me, and for an instant, I felt as if she knew I was there, that I had kept every secret. Her tear-filled eyes, a last glance at the emptiness he had left in the chair, and then she was gone. That day, a part of me, of my essence as a waiting table, also broke. Tuesdays lost their color. I waited, but they no longer came. My surface, once vibrant with their energy, now reflected only dust and melancholy. Years dragged on, like the dry leaves the wind carried into the waiting room. The clinic's rhythm continued, but the silence of Tuesdays was different. It was an emptiness only I knew. But then, on a sunny morning, a new face appeared. A young woman, with Maria's same dreamy eyes, sat in the chair in front of me. She carried a sketchbook. My wooden heart, if I had one, quickened. She wasn't Maria, but there was something familiar in her gestures, in the way she looked at the surroundings. In a distracted gesture, the young woman dropped a small St. Jude medal onto my top. And I saw it. Engraved on it were the initials and the date of a Tuesday many years ago. It was the medal Arthur always carried in his pocket, the charm he had once shown Maria. A piece of a puzzle only I could assemble. She didn't know. The young woman didn't know. But I, the waiting table, understood the great revelation. Their love, even impossible for the world, had left a mark, a continuity. That medallion, that drawing, they were echoes of a passion that refused to be forgotten. A part of Arthur, a part of Maria, continued to touch my surface years later. I remain here, the little table. My wood, once a canvas for cups and magazines, is now an archive of memories. I witnessed the impossible, a love that bloomed where it shouldn't, fed by whispers and goodbyes, and which, despite never having a happy ending for the world, lived with an intensity that many possible loves will never achieve. Arthur and Maria are gone, but what they felt, the courage to love in secret, to dream of what couldn't be, that remains within me, in every grain of my essence. And today, I understand. It's not the endings that define the grandeur of a feeling, but the depth with which it is lived. That small origami bird, that forgotten medal, they are more than objects. They are echoes, proof that life, even in its cruelty, gives us the chance to feel something so vast that transcends barriers and even time itself. And yes, even today, on Tuesdays, however silent, I feel a sweet melancholy, a reminder that love, in its infinite forms, always leaves marks that transform us. I am the guardian of a love the world never knew, but which taught me the most valuable lesson. The human heart is a garden where the rarest and most beautiful flowers bloom in silence, in forgotten corners, and their fragrance, their fragrance lingers forever. And if you feel this fragrance, if this story, told by me, a simple little table, touched something deep within you, know that you are not alone. There are many other voices like mine, guarding secrets waiting to be revealed. Stories of love, pain, healing, and new beginnings that the world may not know, but that live within each of us. If this message resonated with your soul, if you saw yourself or felt the beauty of this secret, then come. There are more stories like this, whispered by objects and places that loved in silence, waiting to find you. Stories that will make you feel, make you think, and perhaps help you heal what is hidden within. Discover them. Let yourself be moved. Your heart has a place for them.